Okay, you're live.
All right, looks like we have most of our players here and ready to go. So I'm going to call the March 31st meeting of the Drug Endangered Children Work Group to order. It looks like we've got Shelley Jo Metzger joining us, Aaron Cernohouse from DOC, Chad Merzinski from the Menominee Police Department, Marshall Moltoff from the Sheriff's Office, Board Supervisors Sheila Story, and Lori Radcliffe from Department of Human Services. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our February 24th, 2021 meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Marshall moves. We have a second.
I'll second it.
All right, great. Thanks, Shelley. Anyone have any discussion, any changes or modifications that need to be made? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from February 24th, 2021, please signify by stating aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, looks like that motion carries and we approve the minutes. We'll move on to the staff report.
All right. Real quickly, just want to update the group that the Cjcc report for 2020 was given to the county board in March. So the activities of this work group from our 2020 activities was included in that report. So it was really well received by the county board in general, and not a whole lot of questions. It was pretty comprehensive kind of across the board, but certainly gave a shout out to all the folks here that participate each month and help kind of move these important issues along the line. So thank you. In our meeting packet, I did send out just some information from the Fox Valley Technical School. So they have a grant, federal grant to provide some training. So as I get those, I'll just kind of send them your way. A lot of that stuff's archived where you can just watch it at your own convenience, but it really does kind of cover the gamut with drug endangered children as far as investigations or kind of what to look for in the medical piece, but just all sorts of kind of tangible training is coming out of that. And they're out of Appleton, which is great, local and national level training. Let's see, the MOU for DEC is out the door. So that is going to the agency heads to sign. As you guys recall, at the end of last year, we did do some updates to the MOU, and Krista Vinn created us an electronic seamless document. So that is working its way around. We'll just continue to update that periodically as we go forward. And if there's any feedback that I get, I'll certainly update the group. And then the last thing I have, which leads into our next agenda item, is at the Cjcc level, we are looking at making some structural changes. So we wanted to discuss that with the group today. So I think I'll stop there and hand it back over to Andrea.
Okay, so I guess the next item is discussion on potential Cjcc structural changes. Sarah will be better at describing this than I am, but I think the discussion from the executive committee meeting was regarding the possibility of sort of eliminating work groups and having more, certain initiatives. I guess what I'm interested in, and Sarah will probably explain it a lot better than I am, is sort of your feedback on not having a formal DEC work group. My thoughts are, personally, I don't really enjoy the formality of a Cjcc work group, and that we have to have minutes and approve them and have a quorum present. I think we have a very active work group right now and a lot of initiatives, and we're doing a lot of very good things. So I don't want to slow down the success that we're having. But I also don't think that this is going to be a work group that's going to be required, for the next 10 years with monthly meetings. I think that once we achieve some goals within the next year, we'll be able to maybe just have like an annual get together with law enforcement and human services. And so my thoughts are, I'm okay with eliminating the DEC work group, but having it be a sort of initiative that we're working on. So I'll let Sarah take over describing sort of that process that we're at. Nothing's been finalized at executive committee, but I think we wanted to get the group's thoughts before we discuss that further with executive.
All right, and thanks, Andrea. And I think you did a nice job kind of setting the conversation up. So as you guys know, we've got a number of different work groups in the CJCC. This is one of them. And a lot of the work groups in general are designed to work on a specific task or a problem or issue and then kind of go away. None of the CJCC work groups have ever went away. I think just one has went away since we've went to this work group structure. So in an effort, we've got a new chair this year. We've got Chris Corpola as chairing the CJCC, and we've got Andrea as vice chair. So it was just really time to kind of look at our CJCC structure overall to see what's working and maybe some adjustments. And the recommendation was to I guess, complete the work groups as kind of ongoing work groups. Formal work groups. A lot of the relationships are built, a lot of the processes are ongoing. So it's more of a need to really continue those processes. We don't necessarily need to have formal meetings that are publicly noticed and are on YouTube with some of our ongoing activities. We really want to kind of focus on priority areas, and we want to be able to be more nimble at opportunities or when we need to get together, and then really avoid kind of being bogged down by kind of the structure or the formality that we have. So the recommendation really is to conclude all work groups. This one certainly has more activities and different things going on. So that's why it is not a finalized conclusion at this point with the work groups. Ultimately, the CJCC will decide at their April 8th meeting. But we wanted to get get feelings from our members. So it's this really group that we meet, and we've been working on DEC in general. Just want to get the sense, if that's something that you guys would be open to. I think the intent would be Andrea would still kind of be spearheading kind of our DEC initiative through our new operations committee that we're looking at developing. So we would still potentially have meetings, DEC meetings, DEC team meetings, work on our goals and activities, but it wouldn't be a formal group of our CJCC and then all that, the formality that comes with it. It is still a priority area for our CJCC, and we want to continue if you think about all the things that we've done in the last couple of years, really developing these relationships has certainly been one of the strongest outcomes of these groups. So we don't want to lose our momentum or take away from what we've done, but we're really just looking at restructuring some of our work and how we work. That operations group that is proposed would be made up of agency heads. So that would be, most of the leadership of the different organizations represented here. So DEC would certainly be still a topic of conversation. We would still be held accountable to work on our activities and goals, but it would just be in a less formal manner. Potentially, as Andrea kind of talked about, once we got some of our kind of the real specific goals and objectives out of the way, then maybe it's just more of those ongoing efforts to kind of keep DEC alive and well in Dunn County and keep our relationships alive and well too. So anything else that you'd like to add, Andrea, before we kind of turn it over to conversation?
Nope.
All right, so just wondering the feedback from people.
I think getting rid of this committee would be okay as long as we still have the opportunity to meet, like we said. I think it'd be well received. I think it served its purpose. So, yep.
I second that.
Chad, what's your opinion?
No, I think it definitely was a monthly must when we were first getting it back up and running, get everything solidified, getting the trainings and everything in place. I thought definitely we had monthly meetings was a must. I think now that we're got the ball rolling and that we're moving, I think sometimes the monthly meetings kind of bog us down a little bit. So I think that, would this be what would it look like after this if we did? Would it be a quarterly meeting or would it be once a year? How would that look? I guess that'd be my question.
I think that's up for us to decide. I think Sheila has some, input on what she would like to see, and I think law enforcement does, and Lori does. And Carrie. I mean, my thoughts are, we have the relationships established that we can just contact each other outside of these meetings like we have been, and accomplish what we need to. I think right now there's a number of goals that still need to be completed that I think can be completed relatively quickly. And so I would like to see maybe down to quarterly and then annually, like an annual event is what I would like to see, just given the turnover that we have in law enforcement and human services. And I think the number one area that needs to make sure that we're on top of is maintaining the good relationship between law enforcement and human services. That both agencies are calling each other and using each other, and when we have new staff, it just takes that time. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, right now things are still we're still the DEC work group, nothing's finalized. Maybe I'll have a meeting again next month, but then we'll maybe start to change that if things progress forward.
Right. So this is up for action at our April 8th CJCC meeting. So we have all work groups on the docket, but we can also continue this work group and adjust our meeting frequency if we felt like we needed to really have that formal structure of the CJCC. So I don't want to kind of present this as it's a done deal, meaning if there's strong druthers to keep it as a work group, we can absolutely do that and complete our projects in the things that we want to be working on. But if the time feels right to kind of discontinue the work group based on our purpose, which was to get this group up and running, get an MOU up and running, and establish protocols. So to Lori's point, I think we have accomplished our initial purpose. But if we do want to keep it up and running, we can and move to quarterly meetings. If we want to kind of go ahead and conclude the formal work group and just move to that informal meetings, and then kind of keeping the initiative alive and keep at the operations level. So, if we have issues that we run into, or if we run into areas that need attention, that we can really get this team back together quickly if we needed. So kind of just have us all be more informally prepared to get together when needed. but not necessarily as formally as we have been meeting each month. So just wanted to let you guys know that we really do have the option to do what's best based on the consensus of this group.
Yeah, I think if that being said, I definitely think that we could scale it down to at least a quarterly meeting for the first year, then biannually or annually, whatever you want to do after that. And then just to make sure that we're still on the same page, make sure we're not missing anything, because I'd hate to see us go extremely or completely away from any meetings whatsoever, because I think that's kind of was the detriment to our last the DEC program. And I think with meth has not gone away and it's still running rampant right now, that I think we still will benefit from at least some type of meeting, just not every month. But I'd like the quarterly meeting for now and then scale it down from there.
Are you saying quarterly as in informal or quarterly formal?
I think quarterly formal. I think we meet on our own, however that might look, every month or every week or something like that. Informally, I know we frequently have conversations between law enforcement and DHS or law enforcement and the DA's office, however that might look. But I think formally we should have a meeting just to make sure we're all on the same page, that we're not missing something. And then as long as we keep that momentum going, we can scale it down as needed.
And not to let you know, if we do that you would all be off the hook, because I know the police department, and the sheriff's office are re-examining how youth justice is being done, and the PD's doing their Project Hope and trying to get their mentoring program on. And so kind of as those changes start to be introduced in the justice system, we may need to ramp them up a little bit or have more meetings to figure out, if we should be expanding this to the county level and whatnot. Sheila, any thoughts that you want to provide?
Not really. I mean, you guys are all the experts and you deal with it on a daily basis. I feel like I'm just like the community perspective, that maybe I'm just that person looking in and seeing if there's anything that I can put out there that might provoke some thought towards doing something. If that happens, it happens. Otherwise, that's kind of where I'm at, to see what my role can be in helping out.
Okay, so based on the feedback I've had, unless anyone has anything else, feel free to join in. We'll just inform the CJCC as a whole that our work group is okay with eliminating the formal DEC work group for the next, at least year. We'll plan on formal quarterly meetings and continue to work on the goals that we have. My thoughts are everyone's time is so precious. The hour that we're spending working on this like formal meeting, we can actually spend that hour working on these goals that we have moving forward. So hopefully it'll actually save us more time so we can achieve more. So
could I ask just a couple questions since I'm new to the work group?
Yeah, of course.
So with the MOU might explain this to me. So when I read that, you may not need to provide very long answers here. So my past experience with DEC in Clark County, it was a monthly 1-hour meeting, and that was more for all of the stakeholders to come together to do information sharing. One department might throw out a name that spikes interest in another department, but there was no recognition that there was that interconnectedness between those. So is this a work group? Is there a separate DEC meeting that all agency heads are a part of outside of the work group? Is this work group just to get that meeting up and running, or is this the DEC group? Because in Clark County, they didn't have the Cjcc, so it wasn't a subgroup of anything. It was its own entity.
I was trying to pull up the MOU and I don't have it.
Yeah, Erin, I think what you're talking about is similar to how we run what we call the investigator meeting. It's basically a monthly meeting where law enforcement comes, the officers that are involved with the West Central Drug Task Force, social workers, probation agents. I think, Andrea, do you sometimes go to those investigator meetings? And I think somebody from the DA's office is invited. And that's basically where they would go around and share information in regards to certain families or, things that are going on in our local communities. So that's kind of what I hear, at least, that you're talking about. But we don't have that spelled out in our MOU.
Okay.
It's something that our county does separate, because it's just not really about DEC cases. It's really, it's all, it could be in regards to a sex offender. It could be in regards to a DEC case. It's really all kinds of situations are thrown out and discussed, and trying to figure out how to collaborate and use teamwork.
There was also the monthly DEC meeting that was following that between law enforcement and human services. That was monthly, but it sounded like since COVID that maybe, and the investigator meeting hasn't been being held, that those maybe haven't been going on as regularly as they have in the past.
Yeah, that all helps a ton. So over in Clark County, we were so small that one meeting kind of played a role in everything that you're describing. So that was usually the collaboration of all those individuals for all those purposes. So I think you answered my question completely, Carrie.
Any other discussion on the structural changes for this work group? Okay, so we'll move on to our potential goals and activities. And I think the first one that I had, based on some conversations with Human Services, was a potential expansion of the youth response team. And maybe Marshall knows more information. I'm not involved with this, but my understanding is this members from the school district and the Menominee Police Department, and I believe Becca from the Sheriff's Office, have these meetings where they discuss youth issues, and I believe DEC issues as well. And according to, I believe, from Human Services, it's been extremely helpful for both their department and for the school district. And I think now that Becca's involved too, there's nothing formal in place, in my opinion, or that I know of in the county. And I thought maybe that would be a worthwhile goal to try to increase information sharing. I did, in one of our referrals, receive a Handle with Care, and I should have emailed it out, but I'm going to try to hold it up to the camera. It's the information, but this is what the report we get. It has the Handle with Care seal on it, and it just indicates the child's name and date of birth, and just states, please handle this child with extra tender love and care today, as they may have recently experienced a stressful and traumatic event. By giving them immediate support and care, we change the path of their future. And then it allows five different options of how the school can help provide extra care to this child. So it was neat for me to see, because I'm handling more of our homicide cases recently. So it was nice to see one in the file. So I think that's going well. And I don't know if Human Services can provide more information about what these meetings are, but the feedback that I received was that they're beneficial. And if it's working well, I was wondering if maybe we want to try to expand that to our other schools.
Yeah, so that the youth response team and then Handle with Care, kind of two separate things. But so the youth response team, Andrea, is something that, Chief Atkinson did kind of spearhead as part of that whole Project Hope initiative. And so it is the school social workers from the Menominee School District that attend. It's mostly Menominee School District. And then law enforcement, the school officers, Tracy Erickson from Human Services. So basically the whole idea is that we're talking about those kiddos who are really struggling in our community and how we might be able to offer them or their families some support and assistance in the community before they ever hit, youth justice or child protection. So basically, like when, Tracy has shared that when she goes to the meetings, it's a lot in regards to discussing what's going on with the kid, discussing, what's going on with the family, and then really trying to brainstorm some different services, what this kid could benefit from, what the family could benefit from. So the school in particular has been, I've gotten really good feedback from the school social workers saying that they just find, all different kinds of ways to be able to connect with these families and get all kinds of ideas and really learn about our community resources through those meetings. But yeah, it is definitely focused on the Menominee School District. So we did talk in regards to whether or not that could be expanded upon throughout our county. So it wasn't just the Menominee School District. But I guess we'll probably have to bring that back to the Project Hope initiative. And then in regards to Handle with Care, that is going really, really well. Basically what the officers do is they just send a quick email to our Handle with Care email box. Our access worker gets it and I get it, and we just basically forward it on to whatever school district that kiddo is in. We just, we don't know exactly what happened. Sometimes a child protection referral might come along the same time, but not always. This week, actually, we got one from the Sheriff's Department, and it was in, regards to a little kid at Knapp Elementary whose mom had completed suicide. So it wasn't anything to do with child protection, but we were able to send off a Handle of Care notice to Knapp Elementary. And, they probably heard about it through other means, but I just think it's a nice way to be able to reach out to those school folks and let them know that something tragic happened in this child's life. So it is definitely going well.
So Carrie, does Human Services see that it would be beneficial to try to expand it into the county to have a monthly?
Handle with Care is throughout our whole entire county.
Sorry, I mean those youth response meetings.
Oh, gotcha. I don't know. I guess we should ask the group what they think about that. The participants that are attending those meetings, if they feel that it would get too large and too cumbersome, or what their thoughts are in regards to that.
Or a separate meeting, and
right.
Does Human Services have the staff to even and the time to do it? And that's another thought too. It's and then if my other question would be in regards to confidentiality, like would it be okay for all of those school districts to be discussing all of those youth at the same time? I don't know.
I suppose there's different ways you could structure it, because a lot of the people in Menominee wouldn't really have any, overlap to these other school districts that are further out. So I guess I would see it as separate meetings with separate people, that would be covering that jurisdiction. Like Boyceville would be the Boyceville law enforcement and Human Services and the Boyceville school, kind of replicate that model, what is going on here in Menominee in these other outlying school districts. I guess is just one way it could be done.
I think that maybe one meeting a year could be with everyone, just so that everybody could feed off everybody. I think that there could be a lot of benefit from them after talking to, again, Elk Mountain in particular and Boyceville, that they're kind of out there on an island, and to see what maybe the people in Menominee do would spark some ideas or some thoughts to them in terms of how they might want to do things in their own schools. So I think there might be some benefit of everybody getting together at least once a year, just speaking generally about policy and procedure, and not so much about the individual kids themselves.
Any other thoughts on that?
If not on the youth response team, the handle with care is the piece that really had me interested in attending today. There didn't seem to be a lot of recognition of what that was within my office when I started asking questions about it earlier in 2021. Is that something that you guys would be open to sharing with us, the template for that and that email address?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send you that, Aaron.
So I could definitely see a benefit to that if we have people picked up out of state in other counties. We may be the first point of contact that would be aware of something like that, and we could get that to the schools for sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Aaron, I see that also as a benefit if a parent is getting released now from prison or something like that and being reintroduced in the community, that possibly was a perpetrator or is going to be a big influence in that child's life too. That might be a big one.
So with respect to I think the handle with care, we all agree is a great program we're going to continue to do and even expand. The youth response team, is that something that we should try to continue to work on maybe over the summer, trying to, establish a meeting? Or maybe, Human Services wants to come back to us and say, like, do you have the time for this? And I don't know if the school districts would have the time.
Right. I know for sure we wouldn't have the time to go to every single school district. I mean, right now they're holding these meetings 2 times a month, every other Thursday, and they're at least 2 hours long. So it's a significant time, and we wouldn't be able to do that for every single one of our outlying communities throughout Dunn County. But I don't think it hurts to go back to, their group and maybe plant some seeds and get some ideas in regards to how we could grow it through the county.
Any other discussion about that item? Okay.
Hey, Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that group initially started because of the high truancy issue and kind of the issues with some of the kids that, particularly just with that truancy issue, and then a lot of the kids that were also on supervision too, and that was kind of the reason for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it basically was in regards to, those bringing up those truant kids and, from elementary, middle school on up, and basically trying to see what those youth and those families were in need of before, we had to get to the point of any type of formal intervention. But yeah, I know that they talk quite a bit in regards to just different youth that are bubbling up at the different schools for behaviors and things like that. So it's not just in regards to truancy, but I do believe that was the initial intent there.
Okay, so I think that's something we can dive further into to see the feasibility of.
Andrea?
Yeah.
The only other thing I would add is since we are really Dunn County agencies, with the exception of the Menominee Police Department. Obviously, it makes sense that we do need to reach out to the other schools. However, being a county supervisor, I know our budgets are tight, I know our personnel are tight, and I know that it may not be easy to do. But if it does involve some kind of restructuring or additional personnel or something, and it ends up being something that's extremely important, that means additions to the budget, then maybe that should be something that is taken into consideration with whatever planning might need to take place in creating that outreach, because obviously we are Dunn County, and so we should be reaching out to everyone if we can. So for what it's worth, I think obviously you guys are spread pretty thin, but there's got to be maybe some way we can figure out a way to do that, even if it means adding more budget dollars. And obviously I would fight for it, but there you go.
Sure. And certainly with Zoom meetings, you know, it's easier now. We wouldn't have to have a social worker drive to every school district. You know, you can try to establish something. So I think if it's working well in the city school district, we should, you know, explore expanding it. So I agree. So the next goal that I think that I set forth, and this is not an exhaustive list, so I'm certainly open to other goals, but is expanding or trying to have an annual event just to improve coordination between law enforcement and human services. I think when we established this work group years ago, that was what was lacking, is just sort of those relationships with who's who, and just given the consistent turnover with law enforcement and the social workers, I think it's something that we should probably try to establish as sort of an annual event between, just because when you have that face-to-face connection and you know someone's name and have them in their phone, you know, hopefully a newer officer will say, yeah, I remember, you know, meeting the social worker and I got to give him or her a call. And so we're trying to, I think that's something if everyone thinks is a good goal, it's very doable, and we can, you know, try to coordinate between all the agencies a date and time. You know, I don't know if we do a summer grill out outside, you know, over lunch, and just have a face-to-face, try to keep it light and enjoyable. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that just sounds really nice right now. It seems like we haven't had something that normal in such a long time. Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good goal. I think you build your most relationships by either sending your staff on conferences together or, you know, meeting outside work. You know, definitely building those relationships, I think is key.
All right, so it's something that we can work on and try to determine date and time with. I know with everyone's schedules, that's especially law enforcement with individuals working nights, it's not always easy. So the next goal would be, I think this was Lori's idea, trying to, or maybe Sheila's, having an access report card that we could, something tangible we can provide the school, saying this is how you make an access report, and these are so-and-so tips as to how to make a good access report, the information to have ready on hand before you give a call. I think it's very doable. I don't know, Sarah, if we have like the budget for printing that, you know, those or laminating cards, but I think it is something easy that can be easily done and would be very beneficial for DEC cases.
Yeah, I think that we could probably scrounge up some money for producing those, or human services would have enough in their budget to offset that. But I think the cost would be pretty nominal for us to do that.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good goal too. I think people would appreciate that, because I hear that teachers are often very fearful of making their first report, or the unknowns of how to do that, how long it takes. So I think that'd be a good thing.
So what do you think of as a goal, trying to get those distributed before the school year of 2021 starts. So if we,
Oh, yeah.
so is there someone from DHS who can work on kind of tips as to putting a list together, you know, in the next month?
We can delegate that to someone.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, honestly, I would say Katarina might be a really good one to do that because she's been a phenomenal access worker and she's kind of doing some other things right now as well. So I think she'd do a good job at that.
And do teachers, maybe Sheila, you'll know this, do teachers, when they start the school year, get a packet of information, you know, that we could just add to it?
They do, but then there's often those in-service meetings that they have where they try and come up with the different things that they want to offer the different teachers on what in-service ideas there are. And this could always be something that could be presented that way as well. But if not, it could be just part of a handout.
And is that usually the end of August?
It is. It's usually that one day in August after all the new teachers arrive, but also it would be good to be part of the new teachers packets. I could see that being a benefit to new teachers as well, or new staff. So yeah, it is always the end of August, probably for everybody in the county.
Okay. Is there anyone else besides the schools that we should be including?
We should remember the church schools as well. You know, we've got St. Paul's and we've got, I think we still have Alliance. I mean, so there's still those schools as well. So I don't know if we ever have any issues with any of them, but that's certainly another area that we may need to consider.
Could be childcare providers, Head Start.
Yeah.
I think the more we can get out, you know, to try to get more reports, the better.
And you might find that Extension might offer some assistance with that, because I even think about like 4-H and those kinds of groups, you know, having some benefit to that because they have interaction with those kids as well. Those people that are in charge of those 4-H groups. So I don't know, just as a possibility.
Okay, so we'll start working on that, and I think that's something that we can get completed relatively quickly. All right, so the next potential goal would be to establish a relationship with a local medical expert to testify on the effects of children when they're in a drug endangered environment or an environment where substances are being used, just to sort of help with the court case. I attended a training a couple weeks ago. It was drug endangered children in a rural environment. Had I known about it earlier, I would have, had I been up to date on my emails, I would have known about it earlier and then distributed. But I was sort of a last minute, like, oh, wow, that looks good. And I registered literally the day before and didn't know if it was open to others. But it was Mike Osmond from the Buffalo County Sheriff's Office and Danielle Shalinsky. She's the lead social worker at Buffalo County Human Services who did the training. That training just sort of confirmed to me that we're doing everything that we should be doing, but that there's always more that can be done. But I asked those presenters, you know, a question as to who they use as an expert, just to see, since they're in this sort of generalized area, and they use Dr. Artie Graff, who we use for pretty much everything child related. So, I mean, we've used Dr. Graff. He's great. My only concern is, I think he's maybe in his 70s now. So his days of being our expert at some time will end in the near future. So, you know, I think I'm just going to continue to try to establish, it would be nice to have someone here at, you know, like Mayo Menominee or Purveyor or Marshfield Clinic that we can use. So I think that's sort of, we already have a relationship established. I'll continue to work on building some others. Yeah, because I'm on the free clinic board and work with some doctors there. So unless anyone has anything else on that, I think my goals.
I don't have, my only other thought was in regards to, so not, you know, not just the expert testimony piece, but also, you know, should we be doing something differently with these kids when we take them into temporary physical custody and their, you know, their levels of meth in their system are, you know, 15,000, like, you know, should they be having certain tests run, you know, just making sure that we're not missing something on that whole medical piece. Sorry.
I mean, I've called Dr. Graff on cases before, and he's really just like willing to have a decent conversation with you, and not charge. I mean, I would suggest just Human Services schedule a phone call with him, and because I think he is sort of the best. He's the go-to for everything for children in this area. Any other discussion on that? Okay, I think, I don't know if that needs to be a goal, because I'll just continue to work on that. And then we already have Dr. Graff set out. And then the last goal would be victim witness involvement in services for children in foster care. The only reason why I put this in, generally, when we don't get all that many DEC cases that get charged out criminally, but there are some, and our victim witness hasn't. I mean, we've reached out to Human Services to speak with the foster family, but it's also difficult to know, given our computer system, we don't have the access that Human Services does, to know, you know, where is this child being placed, or who's the caretaker, and what's the relationship. So I would like to see a more formalized system put into place as to this is who we can contact when there's, you know, a case where we're charging child neglect, so we can at least reach out to the family, because a lot of times we're going in blind and not knowing, like, is this the sister or brother of the perpetrator, and they're not going to be providing information that's always in the best interest of the child.
So I think there's actually an easy fix to that, which is pretty amazing. But so we send placement emails out to all the county people that need to know about when kids are removed. So it can be child support, economic support, our fiscal unit. So we could just really add whoever it is that you want to decide. It could be Jamie or whatever person she wants to decide to just be added. And I mean, the hard part though is, well, most of these cases are DEC related, to be honest. It's very rare that they're not. And either way, they still have your services involved, typically. I guess that would be the hard piece. Like, but so we send out placement emails anytime that kids go into care. So we might just have to fine tune what, or for me and Carrie to be aware when it gets forwarded to you, if victim services is involved.
And will that let us know who the ongoing social worker is?
It will let you know who the worker is at the time of that happening, and then it gets a transfer. Yeah. So, yeah, so it starts with the initial assessment worker usually, and then it gets transferred to the ongoing worker at some point, but so I think that we can figure that out though.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's not difficult.
Okay. All right, that's something we can continue to work on. And then is there any other goals that I know there's a lot that can be done. I mean, I think we could, I think, you know, establishing a mentoring program for our youth and trying to provide more services for our youth is something that is a great community goal to have. But I also am trying to make sure it's criminal justice based, since it's supposed, you know, pretty much, you know, law enforcement, DA, social workers. But does anyone else have any other ideas moving forward? Not all at once.
I think it sounds like a very reasonable list for 2021.
Okay. Well, I think those are some good areas to start with and some very doable goals given, I think we're all sort of messed up from COVID and behind, and hopefully we can meet in person to establish those relationships, because I saw some officers from the PD who I had no idea who they were in court today. So I too, my office needs to reestablish some of these relationships since there's been some turnover and hasn't been that face-to-face involvement. But I guess we'll find out on April 8th how the whole CJCC wants to move forward, and then that we'll let you all know how that impacts our work group. I think, you know, we still have a lot to do and a lot more that can be done. So we'll still be having our meetings, just might be in a different format. So anything else anyone wants to discuss?
I just wanted to lift up the ambassadors. The Wisconsin County Association of Ambassadors is having their Human Services Day at the Capitol by Zoom on April 13th. I think Lori and Carrie and I went last year. And they're working on getting that established again and a list of people that might want to participate in that. And it talked about registering a team, but it also talked about the topics that they are working on discussing. And I don't know if you guys have all gotten that email to where you know what I'm talking about, but if you could think of any other things that you might want as a topic, you know, we might want to let the counties association know, you know, regarding that. And I don't know if any of you guys are planning on being part of the team that would be there on that Zoom meeting to talk to the legislators. But some of the topics they talked about were child support funding, mental health funding, income maintenance funding, children and family aids, Family First Prevention Services Act, youth justice, birth to 3 funding. And so maybe there's some other ones that we should be thinking about putting in front of them as well. So since I had gotten that and I was thinking about getting that put together, I just wanted to lift that up in case there's something you want to be part of that.
I'm participating in that. It's actually not a day now because everybody is, you know,
It's a morning.
I have Zoom meetings all over my calendars with all the legislators,
Yeah.
but yes.
It's a morning. Thank goodness that's all.
Okay, great. Okay, so we will let you know about the next meeting, and anyone have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Any second?
I second.
Great, so hearing no objection, we'll adjourn this meeting.